미국 의회에서 대한민국을 포함한 주요 국가들의 투자와 보안 체계에 대해 논의하는 아주 흥미로운 장면이 포착되었습니다. 강대국 미국조차 이제는 우리 한국인의 자본과 기술적 신뢰 없이는 미래 산업의 계획을 세우기 어렵다는 사실이 그대로 드러난 자리였는데요. 어떤 내용인지 함께 보시죠.
Secretary Pilkerton, thank you for your service to the country. Congratulations on your appointment to this important assignment. As of early 2026, President Trump had announced up to $9 trillion in total foreign direct investment commitments that he negotiated. Just as an example, UAE, $1.4 trillion investment framework. Qatar, $1.2 trillion. Japan, $550 billion in key industries, including energy and AI infrastructure investments. Saudi Arabia, $600 billion investments in trade over 4 years, later expanded to almost $1 trillion. South Korea pledged $350 billion in investment with an additional commitment to purchase $100 billion in U.S. energy products. The president has been remarkably successful in just 12 months' time to negotiate massive amounts of foreign direct investment in the United States. Consistent with that, I applaud your office's known investor program. How important is it that as you fulfill your national security obligations implementing CFIUS, that we keep this open investment climate, especially with respect to these key investments that President Trump has negotiated?
Congressman, thank you very much for your question, and thank you for your leadership on the recent outbound legislation as well. With respect to this question, I think it's incredibly important. The America First investment policy made it very clear that while national security is going to remain a priority, America is open for business. And America is open for business in a whole host of areas. You talk about the technology pieces, AI and quantum and other areas, but we really want to bring in business from all different areas, because obviously the benefit to that is not just to those business, to America itself, but to those communities, jobs, research and development. Obviously, there's a whole host of things. So when it comes to that money that's actually coming in, I see it as part of my responsibility to ensure that the program is in place, whether it's known investor or the standard CFIUS program, has all of the efficiencies that money, assuming that it passes the national security protocols, is able to come into the country and be put to work.
Well, thank you. And at the end of last year, as you just know,
먼저 미국 정부가 추진하는 외국인 직접 투자 계획을 보면 우리 대한민국의 존재감이 정말 뚜렷하게 나타납니다. 3,500억 달러라는 엄청난 규모의 투자를 약속한 것은 물론이고 1,000억 달러에 달하는 미국 에너지 제품 구매까지 결정하며 실질적인 영향력을 행사하고 있죠. 우리 한국인이 가진 경제적 저력이 글로벌 시장에서 얼마나 강력하게 작용하는지를 잘 보여주는 모습입니다.
Today is the committee's annual oversight hearing on CFIUS and will provide members an opportunity to review the Trump administration's implementation of the CFIUS process and the outbound investment security program, both of which are administered by the Office of Investment Security. The United States is the world's top destination for foreign direct investment, with over $5.7 trillion in total investment so far and trillions of dollars of new commitments during this President Trump's current term. Our open investment environment makes this possible, which is why successive presidents have reaffirmed its importance. In fact, foreign direct investment accounts for 10% or more of jobs, while foreign firms employ around 25% of all manufacturing workers, making investment critical to the well-being of Americans across the country. Established in 1975 under the Department of Treasury, CFIUS seeks to preserve this open investment environment while ensuring that the very openness does not become a weapon our adversaries could use against us. The 2018 Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act, otherwise known as FIRMA, expanded its jurisdiction to include non-controlling investments in critical technologies, infrastructure, and sensitive personal data. CFIUS must rigorously scrutinize foreign investments from any source that could undermine our technology, agriculture, energy sectors, and more, while enabling beneficial investments and inflows that do strengthen our economy. At the same time, CFIUS must not become so bureaucratic that the process prioritizes answering every conceivable question over neutralizing threats. So with this in mind, I want to commend President Trump both for his America First investment policy, which reiterates his commitment to welcoming foreign investment, as well as his tireless efforts to secure trillions in new investment in our country. I especially want to highlight CFIUS's known investor portal pilot program, which promises to streamline investment for repeat-friendly investors, allowing resources to be directed where they matter most for screening new risks. However, reviewing inbound investments alone cannot fully protect our national security. This is why Congress enacted Representative Barr's COINS Act last month as part of the NDAA, which tasks the Office of Investment Security to build on the outbound investment security program. Now that this legislation has become law, it falls on this committee to ensure that it is implemented in a targeted and thoughtful manner, while ensuring that American capital does not support military industrial bases of our adversaries, particularly the People's Republic of China. As Treasury writes an updated outbound investment rule, it's imperative that it's clear, streamlined framework so that it can ensure American investors can comply without overly burdensome bureaucratic obstacles that halts our financial sector. As the world becomes more complex and interconnected, OIS must ensure that the U.S. national security is protected both to inbound and in outbound investment fronts. And ensuring that our processes are efficient and effective means investment screening must be transparent and clear for our friends and fellow citizens to comply with, and difficult for our adversaries to exploit.
그런데 여기서 이런 궁금증이 생길 수 있습니다. 미국 같은 나라가 왜 이렇게 외국 자본, 특히 우리 한국인의 투자에 적극적으로 나서는 걸까요? 이유는 간단합니다. AI나 양자 컴퓨터 같은 미래 핵심 기술 분야에서 우리 대한민국이 보유한 독보적인 실력이 미국 경제를 움직이는 결정적인 열쇠가 되기 때문입니다. 결국 실력으로 승부하는 우리 한국인의 끈기가 미국의 최고 결정권자들을 움직이게 만든 것이죠. 물론 미국은 CFIUS라는 아주 까다로운 심사 제도를 통해 국가 안보를 철저히 관리하고 있습니다. 외국 자본이 들어올 때 위험 요소가 없는지 꼼꼼히 따지는 과정인데 사실 이 절차가 너무 복잡하면 투자자들이 망설일 수밖에 없거든요. 그래서 미국은 우리 대한민국처럼 신뢰할 수 있는 파트너에게는 절차를 대폭 줄여주는 노은 인베스터 프로그램을 통해 더 효율적인 길을 열어두고 있습니다.
With critical national security protections. The President's tireless work on behalf of the American people is driving trillions of dollars of investment commitments into America, bolstering our superior commercial innovations and technologies, creating jobs, building communities, and providing opportunities for many Americans. As I'm sure you are all aware, the CFIUS annual report to Congress provides a more comprehensive picture of the committee's work, so I'd like to use my statement here to share just some of the key program goals for 2026. First and foremost, CFIUS's core priority remains assessing and addressing any national security risks that arise from transactions that fall within its jurisdiction. By evaluating these potential threats from adversarial actors, the committee's many interagency participants, including subject matter experts, law enforcement, and the intelligence community, serve as important gatekeepers to protect our homeland. The commitment to this guiding principle must always lead the committee's work. Second, process efficiencies and stakeholder communication will be an important part of CFIUS. While the national security risk assessments must be thorough and dependable and will always serve as the touchstone of the program, we understand that unnecessary delays and overburdensome procedures can potentially reduce investment and limit the opportunity for job creation and local economic impact. In this spirit, as set forth in the America First investment policy, President Trump directed CFIUS to create an expedited fast-track process to facilitate greater investment from allies and partners, which we are now piloting as the Known Investor Program. This is the first iteration of a program that will seek to collect detailed information from foreign investors in advance of potential transactions so we can maximize administrative efficiencies while still adhering to the integrity of process, including robust due diligence and tailored actions where necessary to protect national security. We intend to build upon this pilot over the course of this year and look forward to working with relevant parties to ensure its success. Third, as Congress directed, filing certain types of transactions with CFIUS is mandatory, and the committee has the authority to review any transaction not voluntarily filed with CFIUS that is covered by its jurisdiction and may raise national security considerations. Accordingly, CFIUS is focused on ensuring transaction parties comply with the mandatory filing requirement, and we're prepared to act if they fail to do so. When in doubt, we encourage parties to engage proactively with CFIUS and utilize the committee as a resource in these circumstances, as addressing national security risks is typically easier for all parties involved before a transaction is closed than after. Fourth, building on the benefits of foreign investment, which include increased jobs, wages, research and development, exports, and many more, in line with CFIUS's mandates to educate the business community and strengthen national security, we want to work with industry to better understand their supply chain and vendor needs so we can work with interagency partners such as Select USA, the U.S. Small Business Administration, and the Department of War's Office for Industrial-Based Policy, as well as the private sector, to better inform their deployment of capital to build secure and resilient sources of supply right here in the United States. Fifth, as Congress set forth in the Foreign Investment Risk Modernization Act in 2018, CFIUS will continue to actively work with allies and partners on their own investment security programs. This engagement to date has led to the establishment and enhancement of dozens of investment screening mechanisms around the world and will remain an important part, an important tool as this administration engages the global community on critical economic and national security issues.
Thank you. We'll now turn to member questions, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes. I support President Trump's February national security presidential memorandum, which makes clear that the United States can and must encourage foreign investment while rigorously protecting our own national security. The memorandum reaffirms a core principle of America's economic leadership. We remain open for business to our allies and trusted partners, but we will not allow adversaries to exploit our openness to undermine our technological edge, our supply chains, or our overwhelming military superiority. That balance, speed for trusted investors, scrutiny for adversaries, is essential if we want the United States to remain the world's top destination for investment while keeping our national security front and center. And I hope that we grow our friends, grow our allies, and diminish our enemies in this process. But with the surge of commitments in foreign direct investment, efficiency becomes even more important. So in May, CFIUS launched the known investor portal.
사실 미국 정부가 이렇게 서두르는 모습은 그만큼 마음이 급하다는 뜻이기도 합니다. 하루가 다르게 발전하는 미래 기술 전쟁에서 뒤처지지 않으려면 세계적인 기술력을 갖춘 대한민국과의 결합이 무엇보다 필수적이니까요. 우리 한국인의 정직함과 압도적인 실력이 합쳐질 때 비로소 미국이 원하는 경제 안보가 완성된다는 점을 그들도 뼈저리게 느끼고 있습니다.
Also, the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act mandates that CFIUS coordinate with allies and partners in information sharing and investment screening efforts. Is CFIUS doing this, and in what ways could the committee improve those efforts?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, the door just opened. And I couldn't
No
hear you.
worries. The Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act mandates that CFIUS coordinate with our allies and partners in information sharing and investment screening efforts. Is CFIUS doing this, and in what ways could the committee improve those efforts?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for repeating it.
No worries.
Yes, the international partner engagement for CFIUS, as I mentioned in my opening statement, is absolutely critical. Over the course of the program, particularly over the last few years, we have had a number of interactions, and it's very routine, with folks around the world to help them to develop their investment screening processes. Some of the countries that we talk with don't have any investment screening. Some only have sort of a smaller version of it. And so we want to share best practices as to what we've learned as well, because not only is it just sharing that information abroad, but there's also a huge benefit to the United States, because any country that we do business with could certainly become an unwitting vector for an adversary.
Thank you.
Japan's one of our closest allies, no doubt, but CFIUS has still not granted Japan accepted foreign state status. Why do so many of our friendly partner nations remain subject to CFIUS hurdles when Congress gave you a tool to exempt them?
So thank you very much for the question. As you know, right now, the accepted foreign state status is limited to the Five Eyes partners. We certainly are always examining that and looking at opportunities to ensure that we're able to bring in various investment from various countries. I think known investor programs is certainly another way to take a look at that, and we certainly want to advance that. Japan has certainly been a strong ally and partner, and I'm always happy to engage with you in the
Well, I think we should continue the conversation because as the government moves to a more of a partnership, friend-shoring issue and taking the challenge of critical mineral development, the processing of those is unlikely to take place in the U.S., but it's also unlikely to take place in a lot of the Five Eyes member countries, with the exception perhaps of Australia. So I think that kind of business combination is going to be important going forward. On the nations that have sought a consultation with you on developing their own inbound investment screening protocol, could you provide us a list of those countries in the Western Hemisphere that you've consulted with?
So just picking up on your last point about Japan, I know Japan has been increasing their investment screening, and we'll be likely engaging with them to learn more and be as helpful as we can. With respect to the number of countries.
I do want to ask, though, about emerging technologies such as AI. Semiconductors and the biotech are becoming increasingly important in the national security realm. Many of these companies hold large amounts of our personal data. What measures does CFIUS require to ensure that adversarial actors cannot access this sensitive U.S. data, such as our health or biological information?
Thank you very much for the question, Congressman. And what your question is really almost at the core of the program. Emerging technologies are advancing so quickly that this program has a huge responsibility to oversee that, to identify national security risks, and figure out ways to sort of move forward within this space. So FIRMA gave us quite a bit of latitude and authority over a lot of that technology. And there's actually been an expansion of the technology as well in the COINS Act on the outbound side. So when we see a new technology, whether it's AI or quantum, we go through a whole host of protocols. We have the entire committee process involved in that, and certainly the experts are looking at that from law enforcement and from the IC. But I take your point that because things are emerging and advancing so quickly, CFIUS has a responsibility to the program, to the administration, to the Congress, and obviously to the country to ensure we're staying ahead of those. So one of my priorities is to double the size of our research team to ensure that we have PhD experts that are working on each of these areas as sort of a technology center of excellence so we can stay ahead of the curve.
반면 중국이나 이란 같은 국가들이 시도하는 투자는 아주 엄격하게 감시하며 차단하는 모습입니다. 겉으로는 투자를 내세우지만 실제로는 민감한 기술을 훔치거나 국가 안보를 흔들려는 전략이 뻔히 보이기 때문이죠. 그렇기에 미국은 더욱더 투명하고 정직하며 실력까지 검증된 우리 대한민국 같은 진짜 파트너에게 의지할 수밖에 없는 상황입니다.
Our biggest adversary is China. But that being said, I want to thank the chairman, Mr. Pilkerton, for being here. We meet at a defining moment in the global economy, a moment when our prosperity and our security is inseparable. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, is one of the nation's most important lines of defense. Its job is to scrutinize foreign capital that could intentionally or inadvertently undermine American national security. That mission has never been more vital. And again, when you look at the AI and the cyberspace, the interconnectivity here is almost unfathomable. For years, the People's Republic of China has blurred the lines between commercial activity and state power. Unlike Western markets where private companies operate independently of government direction, China's corporate sector exists within a political system that compels the cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party's strategic objectives, Beijing's Made in China 2025 industrial plan. Its dominance of key supply chains from rare earth minerals to semiconductors and its expansive industrial subsidies are all aligned to exploit open economies while denying reciprocal access to ours. This is not a benign investment. It is a long-term strategy to acquire sensitive technologies, critical infrastructure, and intellectual property that can be used to China's advantage in future conflict or economic leverage. At the same time, the Islamic Republic of Iran has repeatedly used opaque corporate structures and front entities to evade sanctions and funnel hard currency into its military and security apparatus. Iran's network of proxies across the Middle East, its sponsorship of terrorism, and its systematic efforts to gain access to Western capital and technology pose a clear and present threat to U.S. interests. Iranian actors have used complex ownership chains to mass control of entities that operate across borders, a strategy that, without vigilant scrutiny, could allow hostile regimes to penetrate or influence American technology and infrastructure markets. CFIUS must remain robust, discerning, and unafraid to use its full statutory authority to scrutinize transactions involving entities tied to these regimes. And I want to underscore, Mr. Chairman, as someone who sits on the cyber subcommittee, I serve as chairman, I spend a lot of time in the SCIF in a classified setting. We are attacked daily by China, by Iran, by North Korea. They want access to our markets, they steal our technologies, and it is imperative that we support CFIUS in its mission. Mr. Secretary, Assistant Secretary, the Chinese Communist Party requires companies under its jurisdiction to cooperate with state intelligence and security services regardless of how these companies present themselves abroad. Given that reality, does CFIUS treat transactions involving Chinese-controlled entities as presumptively high risk, even when those entities claim to be a private or routed through third countries? Sir?
Congressman, thank you for the question. As you know, under the CFIUS program, there is no per se prohibition from a particular country. That having been said, with respect to China, I'm aware of some of the distinct risks that you're talking about. And so I think taking it at a higher level with respect to the impact of things like cyber, like impact on military technologies, intelligence technologies, those areas are particularly important for the committee, and we rely upon the entire committee around the table to help us inform us of those national security risks so we can make a determination as to whether they exist, whether we can mitigate, or whether to prohibit a transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you.
여기서 우리가 주목해야 할 정말 신기한 장면이 하나 더 나옵니다. 미국 의원들이 입을 모아 부러워하는 대한민국의 디지털 행정 시스템인데요. 이 부분을 한번 보시죠.
But how is that even going to work in real time? If someone from EU and Korea or Japan wants to engage in an agentic transaction, they get out their cell phone and they say, "Here is my legally traceable identity," and you do your biometric login, and they present a secure digital ID that every citizen of the EU is going to have. I think by the end of this year, every citizen of the UK, every citizen of Korea and Japan have had for more than a decade, I believe. And so we don't have that. What we have is a hodgepodge of a handful of states that are getting mobile ID, digital driver's licenses, and that's the best we have. And so as a result, it seems like we're really going to not be able to play in the next stage of development because no one is going to trust any agent that's unwilling to say, here is the legally traceable human behind the deal I'm offering you. And so I urge you to have a look at this and try to get ahead of the curve on this whole operation because it's going to be important and it will be a huge, it'll be a competitive disadvantage to the United States if we don't have a way of actually understanding, who authorized some agent and who is going to take responsibility for that agent's action. Because this is going to be the dominant activity in financial services. And let's see,
미국 의원은 대한민국이 이미 10년 전부터 완벽하게 구축한 보안 디지털 ID 시스템을 언급하며 감탄했습니다. 스마트폰 하나로 자신의 신원을 법적으로 완벽하게 증명하는 우리 한국인의 앞선 정보통신 기술이 이제는 미국의 금융 서비스, 경쟁력까지 좌우할 정도의 기준이 된 겁니다. 미국 정치인이 우리는 저런 게 없다며 솔직하게 부족함을 인정한 장면은 꽤나 인상적입니다. 미국은 여전히 주마다 제각각인 낙후된 시스템 때문에 고전하고 있지만 우리 대한민국은 이미 세계적인 수준의 디지털 생태계를 완성해 운영하고 있으니까요. 결국 미국이 가야 할 길을 우리 한국인이 먼저 앞서가고 있는 셈입니다. 결국 강대국 미국이 진정으로 원하는 것은 자본의 유입 그 자체가 아니라 그 자본을 가치 있게 만들 수 있는 대한민국의 독보적인 기술력과 정직한 신뢰입니다. 우리 한국인이 가진 실력이 글로벌 시장에서 얼마나 강력한 무기가 되는지를 다시 한번 보여준 장면입니다. 낯선 환경에서도 오직 실력 하나로 스스로의 가치를 증명해 이제는 미국이 먼저 고개를 숙여 협력을 요청하게 만든 우리 한국인의 저력, 압도적인 기술력과 정직한 신뢰로 세계의 중심에서 당당하게 인정받는 우리 대한민국 사람들의 모습은 우리 모두에게 큰 자부심을 느끼게 합니다. 오늘 영상을 보며 시청자 여러분들은 어떤 생각이 드셨나요? 오늘 영상은 여기까지입니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다.